All right, thank you. I did notice two things. One, when you said there was an open bar, everyone sat up and made eye contact. But when you said Napa, it got really excited. Everybody was pretty excited. That was good. Yep, and I owe you $5.
Yeah, you do.
So,
Wine and booze.
yeah, sounds good. Well, my name's Jason Theodore. I'm the Chief Executive Officer with Banner Imaging, located and headquartered out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I have the privilege of moderating our discussion today. And as we get started, we're just going to do quick intros of our team. And Nicole, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Nicole Walton Trujillo.
Look,
Oh, wrong Nicole.
watch this. Look what I did. Keep rolling.
Again, Dr. Nicole Walton Trujillo. I'm a clinician, but I've been in imaging for 18 years. I've had the pleasure of running both outpatient imaging, hospital-based trauma 1 level imaging, and currently I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada with Intermountain Healthcare, as well as an educator of imaging for our brand new young techs coming into the field, as well as our fellows who are going to be the next generation of radiologists coming into our field.
All right, thank you. Jason?
Yep. So, whoa. I'm Jason. Whoa. Give me a second. I'm Jason Scott. I'm the Chief Patient Experience Officer at Witham Health Services in Lebanon, Indiana. So it's about 30 miles north of Indianapolis. Also over radiology, neurodiagnostics, pulmonary, wound care, hematology, oncology, and I think that's about it. But very busy. But pleasure to be here to talk with everyone, and it's a great serving on this panel.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am the other Dr. Nicole Danraj, and I am the Systems Director over at Northern Arizona Healthcare. I've been there relatively new in my position, about 8 months, moving from the beautiful island of Guam. And like Dr. Nicole, I'm also in education. I teach for University of Maryland. I'm a dissertation mentor and support a lot of the classes within radiology clinically and in leadership.
All right, thank you. So let's start, and I think either Dr. Nicole can kick this off, but multiple workforce issues loom in imaging departments, right? We are really focused on our culture and our team. Teams are experiencing burnout. A lot of the conversations today were about culture. Can you let us know how you're handling culture in your groups?
After you. Okay. Gosh, it's been a huge struggle. So when I left Guam, it was just at the mid stage of the pandemic. And I can say that, you know, my experience in Guam, I have never seen a group that has persevered so much, you know, through typhoons, through political crisis, through just not having resources. So coming here, it was a little bit different because I felt like I went from one culture who is accustomed to bearing down and, you know, just kind of powering through, versus now coming into this new environment, and it was completely different. You know, there were a lot of complaints, a lot of stress and chaos, and I felt like the team just wasn't prepared to manage it. Now I came in and it was even more chaotic because there was change with directorship, there was change within the organization, people were laid off. So it was really like coming into this chaotic whirlwind and trying to find my place. And the only thing that I can say that has helped me is just being able to provide the why and sitting down and, you know, also having a level of vulnerability. I don't know what's happening. You know, I will give you information as it comes along, but I cannot predict what is happening with our staff in the next week or in the next month. I will be as transparent and honest with you as I have information. And I think that just helped everybody breathe a little bit because I demonstrated that I wasn't willing to withhold any information. So it's really about, I think for me, helping that stress level, being transparent. Well, what is happening with hiring? Why are people leaving? I see this other person get hired. How can we afford them? And just being able to answer those questions as honestly as I could.
Do you have a secret for being vulnerable with your team?
You know,
I think that was a key word in your answer.
Yes. Just being able to balance between my emotional and my logical brain. And I think, you know, I try my best to shoulder. I feel like I like to save the world one X-ray at a time. And sometimes that's difficult, right? Because I want to make the world a better place for my staff and for my patients, and I take on quite a bit. So I think one aspect is knowing who I can be vulnerable with, finding those mentors or those key people, but also recognizing that with some of my staff, I cannot have that level of vulnerability because they are also depending on my strength. So I guess to answer your question would be, for me, finding a person outside of my organization, outside of my department, to help refuel my strength when I'm feeling like I can't do this anymore.
I think that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Nicole?
I think another thing that you hit on is important. It's understanding the why. When our people understand the why, the how becomes significantly easier to digest. And it's one of the keys around change management. And if any chaos, regardless whether it's the pandemic or a change in leadership, understanding the why helps also to create buy-in for the change. And when we can create buy-in and we can get them engaged and on board with what are we going to do, not me leading you, but we are a team in this. We are a collective in this. We are going to push forward and push through. And what should our goals be? And working that out together as a collective. Why are we picking these goals? These 3 simple goals for the next 6 weeks. Whether it's walking through the budget with your people, whether it's walking through hiring choices or laying off choices if it's appropriate. And decisions about what can we do within the department now that we have 5 minutes with 50 less patients a day, that we can actually do something within the department. And why are we making the decision to pick that project? If that is a collective conversation in team huddles, in team rounding, then you are more than likely to create that, again, buy-in for change, and then you're working towards a common goal. So that when the bigger things come down the line, the bigger changes come down the line, it's a lot easier for them to roll with that new change because you have built that level of respect in terms of she's going to talk with us when she can. She's going to engage us in the project and the process when we can. This one may not have been that way, but as a rule, we're engaged in the way our department runs.
I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, so I always get to the why, and I think we can dive into that a little bit more as we go on.
Yeah, just about culture. Jason's questions about culture. And I guess one thing that I've done is that I've never really strayed away from preaching my culture. I chose to pick patient satisfaction in our radiology department as our main driver. So I've never really strayed away from that. I will say during the pandemic, the patient experience factor was still there. I still preached that, but I just kind of added a little twist to it, about, why are we doing some things and, why we're not doing some things like that. So I've always just kind of tried to preach the same culture, whether it's non-pandemic or I guess pre-COVID and post-COVID. Well, I don't know if it's post-COVID yet, but I want to be post-COVID. But
if we keep saying it, it'll eventually,
yeah, exactly.
It'll eventually
but I've just always tried to stay consistent.
I actually have a question for you, if it's okay.
You threatened that when you sat there.
I told you.
All right.
How much time did it take me to shut my mouth?
You did pretty good, actually.
No, the question actually that I wanted to ask you around the area, touching on one of the basic tenets of change management, right? Really covering the why and all of that. But that is a lot of burden as a leader to take on singular, but by yourself. So do you use techniques around kind of creating change agents in there that kind of help with the messaging? Or
I'll take that.
how do you, because I'm sure you all got big groups, right? It's got to be bigger than you're doing that.
Absolutely. I firmly believe you need to have people on your team to help create overall change. Personally, I make sure that if there's a great book, Who Moved My Cheese, or if Disney Ran My Hospital, or whatever your change management, My Iceberg is Melting, whatever, those quick little books around change management that you might lean towards in your leadership style. I always have made a point of any of the leads and leaders in my departments, I've given those gifts to them. I've given those physical books to them to say, take a look at this, give this a read. Let's sit down in a month and just chat about it. And let me talk to you why I think this is going to help us as we look towards this coming change moving forward. And that helps to really create everyone's having that same educational level, walking into the conversation. They've gone through the book or they've read the book and they're quick little reads, but it's enough that you create an environment around you as the leader in the organization of people who are able to have the same conversation with you the way that you're thinking about it. And that will trickle down. And then I've also kept a lending library of a handful of copies of each of the books that I particularly like. So if any of my team members want to come in and go, you know what? Hey, I saw Lisa was reading that book about my iceberg is melting. I'll be like, cool. Do you want to read it? Here's a copy. Take a look. And I have a lending library for that kind of thing to help with my MRI tech in the middle of the night who, you know, I know that we've got change. What can I do to help? Take a look at this and then we'll chat.
Yeah, I guess me personally, I don't have a secret ingredient about change management. I try to keep it kind of simple. So I practice by KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I try to have a consistent message, things like that. But communication, I think, is so important. And, you know, in my presentation I gave yesterday, I talked about rounding, and I think it's so important to round with staff, even round with patients too. I do that also. But I think it's so important to communicate change about why, you know, we're doing the change, things like that. But I like to kind of meet with staff kind of in like little quick huddles, but I do that during rounding. So I don't have a secret as far as changing philosophy, but communication is the key. And I think that's a key to anything that we do in life, you know.
Yeah, I agree with over communication.
Mhm.
And just to add on to that rounding, we spend a lot of really deliberate time knowing every one of our team members. Everyone's passionate. There's no one, at least I believe, there's no one coming into my team every day that doesn't want to do a good job. But if we don't have people aligned based on the goals and the change and what they're good at, that passion turns to stress. And that's the output. And think about the problem employee that you've had. And you're like, well, you know, that's Jason. He's just passionate. Perry, he's just passionate. Well, we're all passionate. And if we get that alignment to where their strengths are and what excites them about certain things, because as we're changing, we need a lot of different buckets. That's when I think you can start seeing some of that positive change and positive results. But to me, it's knowing the why, aligning the team, and then aligning the passion.
So Jason, I often get the question of why are we constantly under change? When are we going to arrive? When are we going to hit that pinnacle? So when are we going to hit that?
Well, probably never, but using a Simon Sinek phrase, reality needs to catch up with vision. And when the reality catches up with the vision, then you at least get to pause for a minute before you keep changing and reestablish.
Yes, and it's to understand the dynamics of our industry. We have technology changing, we have demographics changing, we have economic situation. So we have to adjust to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's something that's fascinating about radiology is it's a constant change, like
Reimbursement
Nicole said.
changing.
Mhm.
You know, whether it's the technology, staff, you know, whatever. I mean, I've been in my current role for 11 years and I've been in management for almost 20, I think. I can't keep track, but it's a constant change.
If you lose track, it's at least.
You're probably right. But yeah, change. I mean, and I think that's what makes our jobs fascinating is that there is that constant change. And is there burnout in radiology? I mean, I think there is, but I honestly, and it's just my opinion, but I don't think the burnout in radiology is as much as what it is, say, in nursing, because in radiology, things change, you know, things are constantly changing. There's new technology, new CT scanner, you know, new equipment, things like that. But I don't know, that's just my opinion, but I just think that burnout, or I guess I'm getting off subject, sorry, but.
Well, it leads into the next one. So I would guess that 2020 had a few changes in it. Most people describe it as the most chaotic year ever. What was your greatest challenge? What was your greatest challenge in 2020? And maybe what was your greatest challenge even
Sure,
with
I'll take it.
change?
I would say learning how to lead my people from home. I was very much I'm in the department by 6 a.m. and I leave at 9 at night, so that I was there through every shift for a little bit of time every day, so that every one of my people had a chance. If they needed something, I was there. And then all of a sudden, when we were all sent to work from home, it was come into the department when you're needed, but as much as you can, work remotely. That was very difficult for me to learn to lead effectively with no shoes on. Now I don't ever want to put my shoes back on. And the fact that I'm wearing shoes every day for you, you should really appreciate that. I am not wearing pajama pants. I should be, but I'm not. You're welcome. But I just do think that that was a real struggle, is learning how to lead not in my department all the time. Or, I mean, because even when you're in the department all the time, you're still going out in and out for meetings and this and that, but my stuff was there. The door was open. My text could leave me a sticky note on the desk. Hey, this patient would really like to talk to you. Or, hey, I've got a question down in ultrasound. If you got a second. Or, hey, the CT scanner, we heard about this protocol we want to talk to you about. I could get sticky notes. Now it was the world of emails and text messages to reach my people on the regular. And it was a different dynamic.
So Nicole, I got a question. So you think you're more efficient working at home or less efficient?
I
never had the
am,
chance to work from home, so.
it's a toss up. I think before the multiple humans moved into my house and it was just me in my house, I was incredibly efficient.
Yeah.
But now there's a 1-year-old in my house and that changes your efficiency. But they're just so cute at times and they make a lot of noise. Why do they make a lot of noise? But yeah, I would think it's a toss up. There are days I feel really more efficient at home because I don't have any constant interruptions.
Right.
But those constant interruptions create the ebb and flow of your workday and allow you to see what's going on and what's really important. And you miss that when you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
You had a question? My independent texts were just as independent. It was as if nothing changed. They would text me if they had a question before pre-pandemic, current pandemic, they will post. But the ones that were the needier texts, the ones that kind of needed more constant guidance, requested more constant guidance, they had to learn to become a bit more independent. And I had to work really hard to make sure that they knew that even though I wasn't in my office with the door open, my door was still effectively open for them. Even if I was, 15 minutes away, they could pick up the phone and text me or call me and I would answer. 2 a.m, I would answer. 5 a.m, I would answer. Like they thought I had turned into a vampire because when I answered the phone at 5 a.m, it never sounded like I was being awoke from sleep. Years of running call taught me a super skill that I was able to use, but it was the ones that were already independent were great. The ones that wanted more independence thrived because they were allowed that opportunity. The needier ones were still just as needy, but they learned that when they called me with, here's the problem, here's what I think might be a solution. And that helped me to A, watch them grow. Or B, when they would call, the younger ones that would call in a panic, I would, the answer was always, did anybody die? Is anyone bleeding internally? And can you see a bone without a picture? If the answer is no to any of these 3 questions, we got this. We can come up with a plan. It's okay.
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge in 2020 is just the uncertainty. I mean, it seems like every day when I went to work, I didn't have the pleasure of working from home, but just every day it's just something, okay, for this time, we're not going to schedule fluoro exams, we're going to shut down the mammo department. I mean, every day it's just something, and management's tough. I mean, it's a challenge, and I love management, don't get me wrong, but gosh, there's so many times I thought, man, I just had it so easy when I was a technologist, and I thought, well, I put forth too much work to go back as a technologist, and I'm not bad mouthing technologists at all, but I just think the uncertainty was the hardest part for me. I was probably in the 20 some years or whatever I've been in management, I was definitely the most stressed out without a doubt. starting March 2020 until whenever. So the uncertainty is the hardest part for me.
And for me, I think I was grounded in knowing what to do and how to react, but more so, how do I transfer my grit onto them? How do I motivate them? Let's get through this day. Not let's look at next week or next month. How do we get through the next 24 hours? And the reason my thinking was like that, because then way back in my military days, I was poor at PT, but I knew I had 4 hours until the next break where my drill sergeant can send me out in the hot sun and make me run and run and run. So it was like, I knew, let me just look forward at this 4 hours and I can get through anything. So similarly for them, how do I get them into that mindset in this short space of time, knowing that they have family issues, they have financial issues? You know, how can I provide that support and build them up? So getting them to see the trees through the fog I think was the most difficult for me.
So I think that leads into maybe one of our next questions. And we started to touch on this just a little bit. So recently, the Healthcare Advisory Board, now Optum, released kind of the future of imaging. And they say that there's a revenue reduction on the horizon. And there's 3 causes for that. Just the typical volume reduction since March. So are people going to come back? There's the volume reduction. There's throughput. Not that our places weren't clean before, but they're really, really clean now. And then there's the possibility of a recession looming. So we talked about job expectations, resiliency, making sure the team doesn't burn out, and the why. So the question for that is, how do you really help your employees understand the why of those important topics?
Gosh, I'm still seeking that answer, but no, I think it's essentially what we've been talking about, communication. You know, I started with my leads. I got them together in a group and I asked them, how do you view change? What is concerning right now? What is worrying? And being able to help get them into that mindset so that when they're on the front line and they're leading their teams, that, you know, they're an extension of me, I'm the extension of my CEO. So just really trying to help them build everybody else around them.
Yeah, the why part, communication, I definitely agree with what she said. I guess you did a good job of answering, Nicole. I don't really have anything else to say about that.
Right?
It's the mic drop moment
Yeah.
of the panel
Yeah,
discussion.
Next. I agree. I mean, she's on it. It's all about explaining the why. When you can really communicate, when you engage your teams in decision making, when you can answer the questions and the worries, that trickles down to your people. And when you're rounding, because I'm a huge fan of rounding, I round with my teams a couple times a day, minimum, usually 4 times a day. I round with my departments and I'll help when I can. But making sure that you have the time in your rounding to acknowledge their questions and concerns and worries and talk through it the same way you would talk with your leads.
I think we've mentioned rounding several times
Because
already.
it's so critical.
And I agree that relationship and that face time is vitally important. Do you have a process on what that rounding looks like for you? And how has that changed since you've been virtual or team members have been virtual?
You know, I don't have a process for it. I just try to work it in during my day. I usually know around lunchtime is a good time to go talk to the mammo techs and the ultrasound techs at our women's center. So I kind of have a mental map of when is a good time to go around with my staff. And Nicole said it too, is that, you know, I sometimes do, you know, twice a day, 3 times, it kind of depends, you know. But I think that the technologists, they want to see us leaders out, you know, they want to see us talk to us leaders. And I was, when I first started off in my career, my director rounded on us. I started off at MRI at a community hospital, and I just thought that was great. And the majority of times when I round, I might even talk about work, you know, I might just talk about, you know, the basketball game on last night, or, you know, I kind of get to know staff, you know, so I kind of know what's important to them. You know, one staff member really likes beer, and I tend to love beer almost too much sometimes, especially during the pandemic. But you know, so we talk about that. But anyway, it's so important, I think, rounding. You kind of get to know your staff, know what they like, kind of know how they want to be communicated with, and know them on a personal level. So I don't have a set time when to round. I just round when I can.
I'm the same way. I know kind of when the right times are to round with my people. I also make a point of rounding at my front desks. I round with the waiting room. I round with patients that are in rooms waiting. I will check in with them. I do the same. I talk about the Golden Knights because really, is there any other better hockey team? The answer is no.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to have you, this one is removed. This is a Golden Knights room. So
The
sorry.
sports conversation, I mean, it all started with they played basketball in Indiana. I mean,
Yeah, it really
I don't even
started
know what's
it.
going on here.
I know nothing about hockey, so I couldn't tell you anything about that.
I don't know anything about basketball, so we're good. But no, it's just, I round regularly. I talk to my people about the schedule. We always have, everyone has that one or two patients that comes to the department, and you know that patient's on the schedule that day. So making sure that I'm communicating with anyone who might be engaged with that patient on what their needs are. The front desk, I'll call patients back. I'll help the tech aides flip a room, or I'll flip rooms when I'm rounding just to make it a little more efficient for them. I'll walk their patients out. It gives me a chance to round with patients as well. I kind of get my fingers in a little bit of everything as I'm rounding about the department.
So I think you and I must have the same work ethic or something, because I mean, everything that she said, I do.
Yeah, I
so,
mean, there's nothing that'll make a tech happier than when you're walking by and they've walked their patient out of ultrasound and the room post ultrasound is a little bit trashed, and you just walk in and take 2 seconds
Yeah.
and flip the rooms.
Mhm.
While you're rounding, flip your rooms for your techs. It's one less thing they have to do, and it is so appreciated by your people. I'll be in CT checking in on them, and I know they're ready for the next patient, and I'll tell them, you know what, I'll go get your patient for you, and I'll go bring their patient back and get them started getting dressed. Gives me a chance to check in with patients. You're done with your patient? Let me help you. I'll pull their IV. I'll help them get ready. We'll make sure they're okay, and I'll walk them out for you so you can do your post-processing.
Mhm.
Just all the little tiny things that you can do means nothing to you. I mean, you've done it in your careers for years. And so it's nothing new to you, but to your techs, oh my God, she's out on the floor and she's helping us. I've covered an entire tech aide shift once because they called out and I knew their schedule was back to back all day. So I went, you know what? I'll go be a tech aide for 6 hours until the second shift comes in, and then I'll go do my job.
How has that translated? So round, why? How's that translated to engagement for your staff and for your patients? Did you see that in your?
I was
staff
that way
engagement
before
overall?
the pandemic. I've been that way through.
Just in general.
Just in general, I do it all the time. I do it no different now than I did before. I might bring chocolate chip cookies more now, but I do it more now than I do it just as much now as I ever did. You had a question?
Essentially, so it's the impact, right? So I appreciate the rounding. I think that's imperative. I certainly understand and appreciate the why, because that's what it does. But talk to me about what you do to help them understand the impact that it directly has on them, and what you're doing as to how it correlates to the why and how it's going to benefit them and or the patient. What do you do with respect to that?
Part of the way I manage my department is I use an alignment board, and with that alignment is very clear on the walls in their break rooms, not only revenue, productivity numbers, patient experience numbers, scheduling numbers. I keep and their equipment information, downtime, how many patients may have had to be rescheduled due to a downtime or a hard down. And I track that every month, every week, and that's updated weekly on an alignment board in the break room. I make a point of doing my staff meetings when I had them in front of that board so I could reference it. So they're very engaged in what's going on in the business side of running the department. I keep that information very transparent so that I can reflect back to that alignment board when there are large changes. So this is how it's going to affect us. This is why this is going on right now. And if we make this change, we can change our scores to, or the metrics in this way or that way. So I'm very transparent with the metrics with my people. The ones that really are engaged in the numbers, those kind of thinkers, they really like that. And the other ones feel talked to, whether they choose to care about the information or not. They feel like they're engaged and that I'm asking and respecting their time and work that they're putting into their department, not my department, their department.
Yeah, I also, to follow up on Nicole, I send out an email blast to all my department every Friday and just kind of tells them kind of what's going on. Definitely send them the patient satisfaction scores, things that we could work on. But I do that every week, and my staff really enjoy that. So between the rounding and the newsletter that I send out every Friday before I leave, I really don't have to worry about too many staff meetings. I mean, I have them quarterly, but I've just found out that communication is just so important, and you got to communicate. You got to over communicate, but that's something that's worked for me, is that every Friday before I leave, I send out and it's just bullet points, kind of like, this and that. But that's how I communicate with my staff. Kind of same thing that Nicole does, just on a different way. Yeah, go ahead.
On the same question? Yeah, so my approach is a little bit different. I do believe in rounding, but I'm stuck in meetings probably 6 hours a day, or even 8 hours plus.
I was gonna say that's impressive if it's just 6.
But I also put it on the staff as well. I round, but I may not see you, right? Everybody may be in surgery, or, they're all occupied. So trying to figure out, well, how do I have FaceTime with them? Because you would hear, well, oh, we don't see our director, or we don't see senior leadership. And I do have that conversation. If everybody was in the foxhole together, who's planning the fight? So I really give them the understanding of what my role is as well. And then say, just as you would like for me to round, how about you come in? I keep Thursday evenings open for office hours. But, stop by, send an email, let me know how you're doing. I also have locations about an hour away. I schedule at least once a week, once every other week, but it's the same thing. I may go down there and spend a half a day and only see a quarter of the staff. Now I'm like Hansel and Gretel, I leave a little bit of candy around so that they know I came by. But other than that, it is a two-way street. You love to see me on the floor, but not every time I'm available. But at the same time, you have my cell phone number. I'm very open to come and communicate. So let's make this a two-way relationship.
That's really great.
I really like the idea of KPIs, dashboards, things, metrics that you're measuring, so that you can show how it impacts them, what that looks like. I guess the only other thing I would suggest, coming from an HCM perspective, is potentially maybe invite us to a meeting too, and talk about how we integrate and what that looks like in terms of keeping equipment up, education.
I do that. I have a regular meeting with my my service team on a monthly basis, and we go through the numbers. And when I want to get new equipment, because CT techs are saying that the CT needs to be replaced, it's really old, we heard there's new stuff out there, I will sit down with my service team and say, look, here's how many downtime hours, here's how much data, this is the information. And when their numbers don't match my numbers, they change their numbers, because they know I don't play. And I've just been on it. I mean, from this minute to this minute, we were down. That may not match your numbers because you got the call 5 minutes later and you got to the department 15 minutes later, but that was 20 minutes. I was still down and I didn't have a patient on the table. My tubes weren't spinning.
And I'm kind of the same way. It's like, I build that relationship with my vendors. 99.9% uptime, that 0.01%, if I have to go dark, its radiology has gone dark. So even though it may be 99.9%, how can we work together to make sure? I have a brand new CT and it's been down several times. This is not looking good for me to get another machine of the same vendor. So really trying to work with the vendor, look at the image utilization. My process is a bit chaotic right now because there wasn't really anything set, structured in place. So to have numbers that match, I'm still working on that. Right now I have to rely on the vendors, but at least I keep a mental note of, gosh, we were down for 4 hours. It created chaos in the ER. I heard so many things about it. So, but making sure that really developing that relationship, setting the expectations, and I'm moving towards developing vendor competencies, because yes, when it comes back time to purchase equipment or even, discuss a contract, well, these are the things that we've been steadily talking about and not necessarily seeing the action on it. So hence, it's just ammunition to get out of a contract or really support buying more of this particular vendor.
Benchmarks. It's all about benchmarks.
Yes.
These are the benchmarks that we needed to hit this year. Which ones have you done? When were they scheduled? Let's have a conversation around my downtime or my soft downtime. I might have a knee coil that's out, but I could still run the scanner on everything else, but I can't do a knee. And I had 5 scheduled. And it's those kind of I'm very engaged with my service team on metrics because I think it's so important. They keep my department running. No, God, absolutely. My patients can't be taken care of without my service team. It's that simple.
Yeah, one of the things we did, and Perry, not to put you on the spot, but you did ask the first question. As a new organization within Banner, Perry's team takes care of all of our service and is responsible for all of our service. So we work together, much like vendor competencies, to create a service level agreement. What does his team need from me and what do I need from them? And the group meets every other week just to make sure we're looking and checking in and holding everyone accountable. And while that's relatively new because I'm a new business, seems to be working pretty well. I don't know if you have any thoughts there, Perry.
So it was interesting that they'd asked that question because I was going to ask a similar one, which is how do you work relationships with people that really aren't in your direct report chain? Because a lot of those can be real key ingredients in there. One of the things that really struck me about the every other week meeting that we have, and everybody hear me okay?
I'd yell.
There,
So
I can.
it's the Simba mentality. Everything the light touches belongs to me.
actually, all I have to do is spin around. I got a big mouth. All right. But
That's what I get for putting you on the spot.
No, but one of the things that I thought was pretty profound in that with the every other week meeting is, yeah, we can talk about KPIs and all of that relative to equipment. What I found with our engineers is that we forgot about the patient in a lot of cases, right? It was all about the equipment and where it is, but it was always the nuts, the bolts, the screwdriver, or the wrench that we were going to turn, completely devoid of really the human aspect. And so I found in these weekly cadences in there that we have discovered more purpose in terms of what we're doing, and that really helps. And I'm just speaking to HDM people really at this point. Just remember there's more going on here than just the wrench that you're turning and all of that at the time. So when Nicole and others say, hey, you are an impactful part of patient care, I'm amazed. You would think that's kind of a common sense thing kind of for our industry. I don't think we always connect it in there, but we've had really good reminders, and I would encourage, if you guys kind of aren't doing that little element to it, incorporate that in, and your service team's even going to kick it up a notch when they realize what they're doing. So
Yeah, keeps us centered on that why that is collective.
Well, realistically, if my machine is running optimally, then I am able to get enough mass and kV in the exact way it's supposed to be to light up my patients in exactly the way they're supposed to be lit up, so that my radiologist can figure out why they have been in pain for so long. You and my techs are integral in that detection of what is wrong and why do you hurt. It's all about what is the best for the patient. How do we help figure out why you hurt so we can get you better?
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, you don't have to touch a patient. I mean, if you're in healthcare, you're for the patient, and it doesn't matter what role that you have, whether you're in biomed, whether you're in accounting. We're all here for one thing, and that's the patient. And I think that's important for people to realize, especially those that don't necessarily touch a patient. But we're all here for one thing, and that's for the patient.
I think that segues nicely into the next question. So that's a good setup. Radiology really does provide care for the patient throughout their entire healthcare journey. What's one or two things that you guys are doing right now with the patients on really making radiology that important part of the healthcare journey to drive outcomes.
You go, Nicole.
Communication. I mean, I know we keep saying the same core things, but again, it's those same core things. Communicating with our patients, whether it's a chart prep a few days before to make sure that you have everything you need so that when the patient walks into the department, you're ready on those outpatients. Do you have an order? Do you have a pre-auth? Do you have the right contrast? Do you have the team to take care of it? That chart prep a few days before, is everything ready to go? So that when your patient walks into the department, it is smooth like melted butter, smooth.
Smooth like butter.
And are we thankful? Are we doing appropriate handoffs? Are we using names at check-in? You know what? Nicole's going to come get you for your CT a little bit, and she's going to get you all ready. And then Jason's going to go ahead and scan you. And I am so excited that you get to work with the two of them today. I've got everything that you need all taken care of. Go ahead and have a seat, and they're going to call you back as soon as they can. Using names, using that connection. And then even if Nicole doesn't go get the patient, it's, you know what? I know I'm Terry. I get to be the one to come get you today. I'm so excited. But you know what? You still get to come see Jason. So let's go ahead and get you ready. And using names and using communication and then thanking your patients when you're done. It was so nice that you were willing to come and see us today and let us help you. You're going to get a survey in the mail. It's all about the experience that you've had here within our department. Really appreciate if you could fill us out because we want to be able to use your voice as a catalyst for change. We care about you. So let's go ahead and get you out the door. You know where your car is? Do you remember what entrance you came in? Those little tiny moments. It's all about communicating. That's how you make effective change for your patients.
Yeah, you know, I could talk hours upon hours on this subject, but
Me too.
I'll keep it brief. But I lead the patient experience team for my facility. And one thing that we've done is that every quarter we kind of put 2 or 3 things out that we want staff to do with a patient. So for instance, last quarter, we had commit to sit where if you can sit with your patients, then make sure that you do that. So in radiology, we're pretty task oriented. So sometimes it's hard for us to sit with the patient. But, you know, if you're doing a consent or something like that, you know, make sure you find a seat, make sure you sit down when you're talking to the patient. So that's one of the things we've done. We also have an initiative to wear our name badge on our left side. So your heart is on your left. So that's why we had people wear on their left side. Plus it's a clear sight for the patient. So we kind of just put like, you know, blast out there. We train people every quarter on a couple patient experience things. And it's really helped us out a lot. Nicole mentioned managing up. We rolled that out too, where, you know, if there's handoff or, you know, if I'm taking a patient back to the emergency room, you know, hey, you know, John is your nurse. John is going to take great care of you. I heard good things from him, from his patients. So, but anyway, we just put out like 2 things every quarter throughout the whole facility. And it seems to work really well.
And I have done a couple of things. So going out to Guam, implementing various patient initiatives, and one of them being AIDIT, and it failed. My staff couldn't use it. The patients wasn't appreciative of it, or at least I didn't see the impact. So it got me into thinking, and in rounding and observing, it was that community of patients didn't really care to know my name or what this procedure is, or to Nicole's point, who is going to be scanning me next. They wanted old-fashioned care. Hold my hand, you know, greet me in the Chamorro term, half a day, call me Lola, Lolo, according to the tradition, and don't use medical terminology. If I were to say, you know, Mr. Camacho, do you want to go to the bathroom? Was no, it was, do you want to pee-pee and poo-poo? So it was really back to the basics. And that was difficult for me because here I am, all academic and professional, bringing in evidence-based practices. And it was a community that didn't care about that. They wanted to know that they can trust my tech, that they can build that connection with them, forget everything else. They are not going to remember my name. They're older and, you know, they're not necessarily speaking English all the time. So the organization I worked in, Chamorro was the second official language. So I tried to learn a little bit of that because that in itself was a huge connector. I am familiar with you, even though I may be completely different to the culture, just because I said half a day, half a tata mano how, it changed everything. And it's the same thing with my Filipino patients. Now, coming back onto the US soil, I have brought in patients and have them involved in my staff meeting. Tell us what we did really well for you. What was one thing that you appreciated about my staff? Not only am I just being the filter of the Press Ganey scores, but here I have patients in front of you telling you face to face. And I think that brought a bit more, wow, you know what? We are really appreciated. And then I go a little bit further. When things get stressful, some of my initiatives are, what is it that you want to leave in this industry? What is your legacy here? Mine is to make it a better place for each patient, getting better care, or making sure that the employees who are coming under my leadership or after me, that it's a better place. It's a lovely environment, just as what Nicole is describing. So, how do I get that information? Through rounding, I sit down, but I'm not just listening to my patients, I'm educating them. So when you come and you have to wait, how does that make you feel? Well, gosh, you guys are never on time and blah, blah, blah. But what about the patient who had that emergency, or the kid that came in and needed to be seen and you got bumped? Does that make you feel different now that you know that? So giving them the insights into the operation, I think, have strongly helped, because one of my biggest questions is, how can I truly provide patient-centric care? How do I know what Perry wants, what Jason wants, what Beth wants? How do I know what each one of you want? We go by evidence-based practices, right? We have some things that we could follow, but what's meaningful to you may not be meaningful to him. So I ask my patients that. How do you think we can truly give you the experience you want? And most of them were like, wow, you guys have a tough job. So I think for me, really, it is about developing that sense of understanding, educating them about our operation. And then lastly, what I'm trying to do right now is implement technology. I recently heard on this podcast that one organization was using QR codes. A patient goes into the bathroom, they need help, they can scan something, they're sitting in the waiting room, they need a blanket, they can scan this QR code, and up comes a live person that they can ask whatever they want. So I think technology is not as expensive as it used to be. So I think that would be something that I would like to see implemented more to support patient satisfaction.
I love
can
that
I- sorry,
QR
Jason.
code idea. That's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So let me get this right. So you had a patient come and talk to your staff during a staff meeting?
Yeah.
I've done that.
Okay.
Two of them,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. That's, yeah, I need to think about doing that.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I've never done that before.
And I turn it. So I set the stage, I ask the patient questions. I say, tell me about your experience. What did we do really well? And then I have the staff ask them questions, because in some cases, it's so hard to come to your staff and say there's a patient that complained, because I know that they're working hard and it's probably a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. So that also allowed them the opportunity to dig in a little bit more and say, well, yeah, what do you like about coming to us? Or how would you be an advocate for us in the community? Especially in Guam, we're always on the front page, GMH is this. So how can we engage these patients to be brand ambassadors for us outside?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Voice of the customer, and then meet them where they are. right?
Exactly.
If we can just do that, life would be good probably for everyone in here. So let's change gears completely a little bit. Last I checked, everyone needs more equipment. Capital's probably reduced. Financing things may have changed. Are you doing anything around unique financing options for your capital purchases?
Well, yeah, so our healthcare facility isn't as profitable as what it once was, which is a shame, but it is what it is. But I needed a new portable. Our portable was down. So, I went the used route. Well, it's a refurbished piece of equipment. And that's actually, I turned out pretty good. The jury's still out as far as how long it's going to last or whatever, but it came with a year warranty. It was more affordable. I've never bought a used piece of equipment before, so we'll see what happens. But that's one way that I've found a way to cut costs now. Me personally, I don't want to always get in the habit of buying a refurbished piece of equipment. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on here, but that's one way that I found out to save money that way for capital purchases.
I actually got lucky. It was last year, we had signed the contracts and not December 2020, but December 2019 for three new CT scanners and 2 new MRI scanners. And I had just replaced all of my ultrasound equipment the year before that. So it was actually being installed. My scanners were being installed in February and March. So luckily I have been able to, I had no capital purchase requests for last year because I had done everything in the prior 2 years. I replaced 5 ultrasound units and all my scanners at the end. So it just, I got lucky within the bubble. So I didn't have the problem with capital.
Right now, I am making use of the partnerships. Well, ECRI for one, making sure that I can get the best bang for my buck. But looking within the organization, what is OR doing? What is cardiac cath lab doing? And seeing how we can partner to get those bigger group discounts. Before, and it's been my, general practice throughout my career, radiology was always in its own bubble, whichever vendor we want to go with, and then we purchase, whatever timing. But now, how can we make use of these group packages? Okay, all right, I'm ready to get a GE piece of equipment. Is there anything else that you want? Maybe your injectors. Let's look at the time frame and come together. So really forming those partnerships. And then since I came into Arizona, we are a member of MIHA, and maybe you know the acronym, but it's the group, a group of various radiology professionals, and they do take advantage of some of these group pricing. So if anything that we can say, hey, I'm looking to get, X equipment. What about if we go through this group pricing? I mean, we have our hospital GPO, but it provides another avenue to partner to get equipment at a discounted price.
So the follow-on question with it sounds like you all are still doing cash purchase. So anybody doing anything?
He's asking about, and this is where I was going, cash purchase, and are you doing anything unique as far as volume-based arrangements, leasing, any type of other financing?
So we haven't leased. The only time that we do like any kind of special pricing or payment is if it's like a 6 month same as cash deal or a year same as cash or something like that. So where there's basically zero interest. So that doesn't happen very often, but traditionally we have never really have leased equipment.
And same here, traditionally, it seems that that's what's happening in the organization, but trying to work with the vendors. What can you offer me? And trying to sell that to my CFO.
Yeah, for me and my current organization and others, it is all about that lease versus buy assessment and how the CFO really looks at that. I do know that there's a lot of people really trying to do more and more around the financing options and really getting creative. I personally think that we'll start moving there quicker than we may realize, because to keep up with the technology that we need, we're going to need to be creative to do that.
Yeah, with the capital purchases, we use MD Byline too, and we get the vendor down to the MD Byline price. So if they don't get down to the MD Byline, I mean, they'll always, sometimes we'll argue with you, oh, I can't get down there. Well, if you want to make the sale, but we use MD Byline, and it really helps us out to get a fair price.
And just to your point, what you're saying too, especially as the technology is changing so fast, being able to purchase or lease equipment and change it out when the new model is here as well.